In a few hours, I will be going to see Kinds of Kindness. I like Yorgos. I'm not crazy in love with all of his movies. I thought Poor Things was certainly really good, but I did have some fundamental flaws with it, as well as some of his other films. But you got Emma Stone, you got Jesse Plemons. I am intrigued.
One eternity later. 1 hour later. 2 hours later. 3 hours later.
Can you move it along? I'm all out of time cards.
This is it. The moment of truth.
That's 3 hours of my life that I'll never get back. Kinds of Kindness. This is an anthology film. First story follows essentially a man trying to get in the good graces of his boss. The second story follows a man something's going on with his wife and he's trying to investigate it. And then third one is a woman trying to get back in the good graces of her group that she is a part of, some weird sort of religious cult that she is a part of. Essentially, these movies, while they are different stories, these characters are very similar in archetype. You have Willem Dafoe in this movie. He is always kind of like the elder statesman leader that people are trying to get in good graces with. You have Emma Stone, who kind of plays the object of fascination to the men in this film, specifically Jesse Plemons, who I think I would characterize as the main star of this film. Jesse Plemons plays, to put it bluntly, the cuck of all three stories. He is a man that is getting constantly cucked in Kinds of Kindness. And this has Yorgos Lanthimos' general style and sensibilities that we all know. It has a very dark sense of humor. It has a very wild sensibilities of just nothing normal. There's such a unique vision at play when we talk about Yorgos Lanthimos as a filmmaker, and he has such an eye and way to tell a story. And the issue with Kinds of Kindness is this movie's just completely scatterbrained. And it's kind of sometimes the issues that I have with anthology films in general, which is essentially, it just kind of feels like three stories that were half-baked, and like these were three ideas that he maybe had for a movie, but there wasn't enough meat or substance to make a full-length movie, and it really suffers because of this. And I should just state, as much as I'm being, over-the-top facetious about this movie and poking fun at it, it does have the brilliance of Yorgos in here at times. I think this movie has some really genuinely funny laugh lines. There's a few punchlines in this movie that I thought were great, like really great payoff. Specifically, the third story has a really great finale that serves as a punchline that I thought was incredibly funny, like audibly laughing out loud uncontrollably in the theaters. It's just that nothing else really amounts from it, and I think the story suffers solely because of it. Jesse Plemons, like I said, I think he gets out the strongest of this, and the first story of this movie worked for me. This movie really, if I'm trying to dissect what this movie is about and what these three stories within this anthology are about, I would describe Kinds of Kindness as a movie that explores power and how some people have power and how that causes other people to want that power or to be in the good graces of people who have power, and the lengths that they will go in order to be in said good graces. And I think that is the running line throughout this movie. I think that is the through line that you can find in all three of these stories. You could then say that this movie explores gender politics. This movie explores American society and as they relate to all of these facets, because I think there are three distinct facets of life. We follow one that's more religious, we follow one that involves an officer of the law, and then we follow one in corporate America. Those are our three big settings in this movie. I think there's a little bit of conservatism that you can see in this movie, specifically where these three worlds are set in and certain ideas that have been idealized, I guess, in conservative politics, but I don't think that's what this movie is about. But it's certainly a subtext that I think is present specifically with all three of these stories, and specifically, I think, with the Jesse Plemons characters. I will say it's in the text but you don't have to read it that way. I made note of it, and I made note of it because I was just trying to figure out what this movie is about, because honestly, while watching it, I really just didn't understand the artistic point of this movie, and that's a little just harsh to say, and that's probably really stupid of me to say as well. I'm not going to deny that that is a dumb take for me to have, but while watching the movie, I just found myself frustrated. I didn't really get what Yorgos was going for in this movie. It just felt so off kilter and so over the top and so random in assortment of scenes and little vignettes within these anthologies that nothing felt of substance to me. And I was kind of left grasping for anything to really just understand this movie. And there are, like I said, there's certain scenes in this movie that works. There's certain humor in this movie that works. And I think the performances are all really strong. You have a lot of really talented actors in this movie. No one's giving a bad performance per se. I think Jesse Plemons is giving the best of the performances throughout them. However, he does disappear a lot in the third story, which is, I think, also why the third story struggles. Emma Stone is probably the second big lead in this movie, and it's even kind of advertised as her as the lead of this movie. She's kind of absent for the first two stories. She is there, but the character really doesn't do much. The third one is where I think she gets the most to do as an actress, which is also a problem because the third one, I think, just completely falls off a cliff. I don't think Yorgos had any form of grasp on the third story at all. And it's a frustrating experience. So you have a lot of great actors, like Willem Dafoe, great in every scene he's in this movie. Chau, just wonderful. Margaret Qualley, who's one of my favorite up-and-coming actresses. I think she's so good. There's other appearances. Alwyn, he's fine in this movie. Can't really say that he's particularly memorable. Schafer's really good in her little scene in this movie. The performances are all good. There is a technical level to this film. There is a brilliance in the choreography, the cinematography in there. I'm not denying that Yorgos has talent. It's just the issue is the story is just such a mess, and it was so frustrating to behold. And it was so off-kiltered, and I think it also errs on the side of pretentiousness as a filmmaker that Yorgos occasionally, he rubs off against me in that way, where I think he sometimes, to me, when I am watching his movie, I feel that he thinks he is cleverer than the audience, and he's doing something that feels subversive or shocking or just groundbreaking. And when I watch his movies, my ultimate thought is, okay, that's dumb, or, oh, I've seen this before. That's not that interesting. That's not really a new trick. And you're kind of presenting it with the air of, look at how brazen I am. And I don't connect with that at all. When I'm watching Yorgos's films, there is this tension that I have while watching that, where I'm just something is rubbing me the wrong way while watching it. And that I think it's just that sometimes aesthetic that he does it. There's too much in this movie. There's literally just too much film in this movie, but it didn't work for me. And it was so frustrating to sit with this movie and have a movie that I think thinks it's cleverer than it actually is, thinks it's funnier than it actually is. This is so specific sensibilities that I think most people will not like this movie or not enjoy this experience. This is a very specific type of art and a very specific type of art to latch onto. And again, some people are going to love that. And I understand that. I understand if this movie is your sense of freak, then you're going to have a pretty good time with Kinds of Kindness. My issue while watching it is I was just completely on a different radar with this movie, where I'm just sitting there and I'm nothing is clicking with me. This is just so painfully obtuse in everything that's trying to accomplish that I'm having a miserable experience. And like I said, I've had that experience at times with Yorgos films, but none of them as prevalent as this movie. I'm struggling to get the words out that I wanted to explain what my fundamental issue with Kinds of Kindness is. So I apologize, and I'm going to just kind of go straight off the dome right here and just really try to capture it here for you guys. But while watching Kinds of Kindness, I just had this feeling an experience of who do you want to make movies for? And are you only making movies for a really, 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 really specific audience? And if you are, that's cool. And I respect that. But like, I don't know. I'm rubbing off against that where I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, you made a very specific movie and it has a very specific tone and sensibilities and all that. And maybe certain people will love it. But like, I don't know, like, Yorgos, I don't know, have a little bit more fun. That was one of the other issues with this movie that I just had, where this movie definitely has comedy and has really dark comedy in scenes, and certain scenes of that dark comedy really worked for me. But it's so overly serious and so overly dark that I'm just like, had this film, and I already described it as off kilter, but had this film really just escalated in not just like the wildness, because there are scenes that happen in this movie that I think are pretty shocking and horrific to watch, and it's very unpleasant to watch. But had it just took the energy of those scenes specifically, and I don't know, had a little bit more brevity to it, overtly comedic, like just where it's kind of fast and loose, I think it would have worked a lot better as a film. And I don't even know what I'm trying to fully describe there of like a movie or archetype of a film that I'm thinking of. But while watching it, I just found it not funny enough to get over how unpleasant some of these scenes that I was watching in this movie were. But it's also not a movie that is supposed to be unpleasant. Like, it does rely on its dark comedy to really get you from scene to scene and really be invested in this movie. And so on both fronts, they just didn't click with me at all. And that's why Kinds of Kindness, it's one of the worst films I've seen in theaters this year, like, fully honest. And that's not true. It's not one of the worst movies I saw this year. It's not. Like, it's a pretty technically good movie. It has really clever writing. Like, this movie made me laugh more than a lot of movies this year have made me laugh. This movie has really great performances. Again, I think Emma Stone is very underutilized in this movie, and what they do with her, I don't know. I really feel the male gaze at times while watching a Yorgos Lanthimos film, and it kind of drives me crazy. And I just had all those issues in here. Essentially, everything I dislike about Yorgos Lanthimos as a director, which isn't a ton. I think he's a really talented director, don't get me wrong. But everything I dislike about him is fully present in Kinds of Kindness, and it made for a really unpleasant experience that I will not recommend. I will never watch this movie again. I think it's a really bad movie. Again, I've seen far worse movies this year. I haven't seen 3 hours of a movie that I really kind of found torturous to get through. Ultimately, I found it a slogfest. Cannot recommend. Kinds of Kindness, it's going low for me. Get low. 1.5 out of 5 stars for Kinds of Kindness, and I might be being generous.